Janine, I'm so
Hi.
excited doing this today.
Me too.
Okay, so you came up with this topic, and I was like, cool, I know nothing about this. And then I did a little research and I got super excited, and
Yeah,
I cannot wait to get into it. So, do you want to talk about the E plus R equals O mindset? That's our topic today. Oh,
I
wait a
do.
minute.
But we
First,
got to check in
we have to
with,
talk about our action items.
right. Yeah.
Oh, shit. I didn't do mine. Did you do yours? I did. I
Yeah.
lie. I'm kidding, but I didn't.
So
Great.
I did. I listened to the meditation
Okay.
and I defined a few different purposes, but I really struggled with this one
Okay.
to make actionable for me daily. But I think it's because it's something I need to focus on because, like, I have this workaholic mentality that I think I got from my mom. My mother had one purpose. Well, what two?
So
One,
funny.
one I didn't recognize. Her main purpose was the health, welfare, and education and well-being of me and my brother,
Right.
which I didn't recognize because I was a
Okay.
teenage daughter. And then her other purpose was her work, right? She's a social worker. This guy's like 43 now.
Oh
And
my
people
gosh.
still credit my mom and my dad with changing their lives when they were kids.
And
So, yeah.
and what how does that translate to your trying to identify your purpose?
So her purpose was that, and it was everything.
Save the
And so
world.
I didn't see any other, and she and I've had long conversations about this. She didn't clean the house or cook or
Oh.
do all the things you
Oh.
normally do to make a household like run well.
Yeah.
And my dad kind of did when he was home, but not a lot. Like our house was the messiest all the time. And I didn't even notice when I was a kid.
Because you got used to it.
I've embodied that. All I do is work and I don't take care of anything of a domestic nature. And so my life is
Mhm.
incredibly chaotic.
Okay.
And so this week, I was trying to. So last week, my purpose was just the work, helping people feel motivated while they
Mm.
take spin classes and work out. And is that really loud? I'm so sorry. They happen to be doing yard work outside today. Can you hear that?
I hear nothing.
Okay, good. And helping addicts feel less alone, right? Those are my primary purposes. And I literally wasn't even able to see anything else. And I'm like, well, I do that every day. I don't need to write it, but like, I don't even know what to write, right? Because this is just what
Oh,
I do all the
interesting.
time. And then you sent me that second podcast earlier this week with Tim Ferriss and Greg McKeown.
Yeah.
And he spoke about bringing his daughter with him to an event where he was speaking.
Yeah.
And he said, obviously, I needed to be focused on my speech, but also my daughter was there and I wanted to be present with her.
Right.
So that was a second purpose. And when I
Yeah.
heard that, which was Tuesday, I did allow myself to, on Wednesday, I cleaned the house and did, quote, domestic stuff as my purpose that day and forced myself
Hmm.
to kind of let go of. It was a day I didn't do any content. I think I found some content. I repurposed something else from another interview and started to feel like really guilty that day that I needed to record something for
Mm.
chasing heroin. And
Hmm.
then thought, you know what? No, my purpose today can be cleaning the dang house so that I'm more organized to better
Hmm.
achieve this larger goal. Right.
In a
And
peaceful
so
way.
this week, it kind of came together for me more. Last week, I was like, I know my purpose. Every single day, it's to help people stay fit and be inspired and addicts. I know that.
Yeah.
But
And so
like,
that comes naturally.
yes, but there's more to life to focus on, right?
Yeah.
And so, but it like took me a full week to really apply this in a better way to my life. Does that make sense? And so this,
Girl, it makes so much sense.
and so I did, so I was going somewhere with my whole story about my mom because it comes from somewhere, right? I
Of
watched
course.
them
Yeah.
dedicate their whole
Yeah.
lives to these global purposes. My father's the same way. And they have both said now that they're remarried to other people that have made their lives more organized, that they missed the boat on that and that they're so much more organized now. My parents' story is like one of the greatest romances I've ever witnessed. But they were so similar. They're like twin flames, I think. But now that they're
Yeah.
married to other people who are able to keep things more organized, they
Yeah.
like shine in their respective purpose,
Ah, okay.
you
Yeah,
know? And they both can
absolutely.
do it. And she and I talk about it all the time, and I want to be more organized so that I can
Ah,
have my head not so cluttered. So, anyways, I was able to focus on that this week. So on Wednesday, I cleaned and washed our sheets and all the things that people
right.
normally do. And so it was helpful for me to identify separate purposes that would also help my life because it's not just about work, right? So for me,
So
that was helpful.
I am noticing something that in you that I've noticed in myself is that because when we got off the last one, so the action item was what is my purpose today is the writing exercise and who is in your round table. And when my notes are, I specifically called out work. I can't read my writing, manage, and self-care. Oh,
Honey, oh,
marriage. I couldn't
marriage.
read my. I think I was writing down your action items.
That was supposed to be mine.
Yeah, and the purpose, just to recap sort of the action items, is your purpose has meaning, it's bigger than me, and future oriented. And I could see how these topics are kind of dovetailing because I wrote down something you said about wants to be more organized. That's
Mhm.
something that you and I were both talking about as identity, character traits, or values that we wanted to embody. So I
Right?
could see how this is all
Yes.
dovetailing together, right?
Well, but that's perfect. That's our whole goal because
Yeah,
the
yeah.
whole goal is to embody these things that we want to desire, but then how? And so
How?
actually,
This is the
we didn't
how.
plan it, but the first episode was the identity traits we want. And
Yeah.
now the episodes are working towards getting there. You're right. And like
Yeah.
you said, we didn't necessarily do that on purpose, but it's obviously dovetailing together.
Yeah. And these action items, it's not like we do that. And I'm glad we're still doing these for 2 weeks because I feel like these are really heavy mental paradigm shifts that
Yes.
take a minute. It's like we're
Yes.
planting the idea, and it does take a minute to sort of marinate before we
Right.
can start taking. I mean, we're
Right.
all about the action, right? So I'll just share that my actions of what is my purpose today. So I'm in transition. Like I'm like, what do I want to do for work? Like when I say what is my purpose, I'm saying what is my job?
Okay.
What is
Okay.
my job? Um, and so, but I for me to in order to get clarity about what I want my future job to be or where I should put my time is I need to start with first principles of like, who am I? And what
Right.
brings me joy? Like I have still been wrestling with this question of what is it that I want?
Right.
And I'm like getting all these messages about letting go of what's no longer serving me, letting
Right.
go of identity. And I really have to start with who am I, which is the identity stuff that we've been doing
Right.
and tuning into my own heart and following the joy like that. It's an internal compass for me, right? So when I was doing what is my purpose today, I kept my struggle was as I kept thinking, what am I supposed to do? What is my job? How am I going to
Mhm.
make money?
Yeah.
Right? Like these are like this is the year that I'm like, I'm going to figure out the money thing for myself, for my family, for my future, to be an example to others, right? But I'm sort of doing this whole project me thing where, and this is why I wanted to do the podcast because I needed to find a way to apply the ideas to my life so I can like break out of these habitual patterns that I have.
Right. Totally.
I keep on this, I keep running around the same track, ending up in the same place. I'm like, how did I get here again?
So
Right.
let me ask you this. Was your purpose daily different or were they pretty similar day to day?
So it was kind of different
Okay.
because the other podcast that I've been doing for almost 8 years, right, follows the schedule. So I interview
Right.
people during the week, and this week was a little bit different. My overarching purpose is to be of service. but it's also to do my own personal healing, like do my own work so that I can serve better,
Right. Okay.
if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And I don't know, I went through a little workaholic binge over for like a month period. Like I would say from mid-November to the end of December, I went into workaholic mode. I got like this manic inspiration and I was like doing all this stuff and I stopped doing my self-care and it made me like unwell. Like if
Okay.
I don't do my self-care regularly, like I get mentally crazy and I overindulged in my workaholism. And so now I'm kind of coming, this is my coming out of that phase is, and I do that by doing the self-care work. So my purpose from a day-to-day base was to check in with myself, to practice meditation, to feed my brain good things, to be of service to others doing the podcast. So the service of others sort of shows up in twofold. Like I interview people, so I feel like I'm helping them
Right.
like promote their agenda. And I'm helping my listeners by providing information that I believe will help them get better in
Right.
the addiction recovery space. So that's like, so for me, that kind of checks the boxes of it has meaning, it's bigger than me, and it is future oriented.
Right.
Right. So day to day, it was a little bit different, but I feel like I'm kind of without a rudder right now because I don't know what my actual work is going to be. I do feel like this self-help junkie podcast project it's really exciting to me because I can see that there are so many of us that are seekers and consumers of content that have difficulty applying the information. And I'm a perfect example of that for this last 2 weeks because I had trouble applying the information.
Me too. You know
Yeah.
what, though? I think that I came to a conclusion mixed with what Greg McCowan was saying that I think would be an even better way to take this forward. And this purposing is going to be something I continue to do, which is,
Yeah.
did you separate your purposes? So say your interviews were Tuesday and Thursday. Did you have Tuesday and Thursday, your purpose was serving my audience, serving the guest, serving the recovery community. And then on Monday, purpose could be a self-care day. And then on Wednesday could be a family day. Because I think for me moving forward, that's how I'm going to try to do it, which I think is sort of what Greg was doing. And literally even in his calendar, because I'm putting everything in my Google Calendar now and I'm color coding things
Nice.
and which I've
So
never done
organized.
live, I know. And so I'm gonna try to make my days scheduled also with purpose. So
Interesting.
say
Okay.
I have three purposes, which I kind of do. Self-care, which for me would be internal as well, like we spoke about, which blew my mind when you said that. For me, that should be going to the dentist and going to the doctor, not Botox
Oh,
and filler and lashes. That's external care, right? And it's sort of self-care, like for someone like my mother, that would be self-care because she never does it, neglects it. I don't neglect my exterior. I've been doing it for a long time. I've spent lots of money. I've neglected my interior. So self-care for me would be like going to the dentist. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Which
Yeah.
I kind of thought about when you and I had that conversation. And so for me, I'm going to try to schedule this purpose in and separate them day to day. So if one purpose is my marriage, the health of my marriage, that's on Sunday, which I did do. We went to yoga together. This Sunday, we're playing pickleball with my husband. So like a marriage purpose day, and then
Mm,
a cycle bar, my studio purpose day, which can also fall as a chasing heroin purpose day, right? Depending on my schedule, and then self-care days. Does that make sense? So like, I'm going to
yeah.
try to put my purposes on different days that line up with my schedule too, because what happened on Wednesday, it allowed me to let go because I was like, no, my purpose today is the house, which is
Oh, wow.
self-care and marriage and organizational. So that's my purpose today. I've got chasing heroin and cycle bar on other days. I'm
Yeah.
good. I don't have to worry about that today. Does that make sense? Is designated for this. So I found it easier this last week to separate my purposes into different days.
Okay. That I think will be super helpful for a lot of people. Can I just note that I just learned something as you were talking? as we were like, what came up for me, I recognized a missing piece was self-acknowledgement. Like, so, so like
Mhm.
I publish episodes on Thursday. So my purpose on Wednesdays is like, and when I say purpose, like my priority for that day, like I can do a bunch of other stuff because I feel like
Mhm.
my self-care has to happen daily. Like that has to happen daily. Like, and I feel like maybe some relationship stuff happens daily, but it's
Sure.
like when you first learn a skill, like you have to be really present and then it becomes second nature. And so it doesn't take that mental bandwidth. I don't suffer from decision fatigue, which was the second thing that I learned while you were talking, which is when it sounded like what I kind of heard was that when you learned something and it became second nature, it allowed you to let go. Like when
Mhm.
you realized, oh, this is my purpose this day, so I can let go of something that's not my purpose that day, which kind of frees up your mental bandwidth and prevents you, it doesn't drain your energy in the form of decision fatigue.
Or make me feel guilty. I'm not
Yeah,
tending
you
to
can
my
release,
content.
okay, letting
I'm
go
not
of
tending
guilt.
to my content. It's
Oh,
okay. I
good.
can focus on this one thing.
Man, I feel like letting go of guilt is a big deal.
Well,
It's a
it's like
big
this
deal.
work guilt. I have constant work guilt. I'm not doing enough
Okay.
for the studio. I
Work
need to
guilt.
be checking our text messages. I need to
Oh,
be. And so for me, I agree with what you just said. There are elements of each daily, like especially for you and I, if you have a recovery morning routine or just even a life recovery morning routine, which I know that you do, and I would love to work one in again. Those can be present day to day, but the priorities fall under the
mm,
larger purpose. Like Wednesday would
okay.
be service day, though you do your morning routine and of course
Uh,
you connect with your husband. The priorities are aligned by purpose on the calendar.
okay. Purpose is
Is what I'm
aligned.
going to try to do.
I see that now, which helps it to make sense in my mind so that as I'm looking at my day,
Right.
it's
So
like, what
Wednesday
is,
can be your ODAT service day.
yeah,
It doesn't mean you don't do your morning routine, but like that priority is assigned to that day. But then maybe you have a different day that's your family purpose day. You may book an ODAT guest that day on an email,
yeah,
but
yeah.
your priority and purpose that day is family. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And I like this idea of letting go, right? Letting go of work guilt. So this sort of circles back to, I feel like you and I both have the same thing when it comes to work. It's like, it's never enough, which is why I
No,
was
we
kind
have
of
the exact
highlighting,
same issues.
girl, I don't know.
I
We're
think it
gonna
sounds
need
like
we're gonna need our self-help junkie friends, our seekers to join these bi-weekly
conversations
meetings. Yeah, because I feel like there will be people joining who can fill the gaps for us. Like
for
we can fill
sure.
the gaps. Like I'm good at relationships, you're good at health and fitness and eating and so many things. So that we'll help fill the gaps for each
Sure.
other on the bi-weekly Zoom meetings, which you can find on Patreon. So it's patreon.com/. Self-help junkie. Plug for the group. If you're not on there yet, you got to get on because
Yes.
we all need each other is what I'm getting very clearly.
But you
Because I
already
wouldn't have
helped me.
figured this out.
You just mentioned you're good at relationships. You already helped me. I didn't even think about putting my marriage as one of my purposes. I
Oh
take it for granted.
yeah.
And then you said that, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, duh, Skylar, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I love this. And I just learned a couple of things about, about letting go of guilt. But let's do the acknowledgement piece. I think giving ourselves credit for the things that we did
Yeah,
builds momentum. It's like they always say, like in coaching, I always tell people we got
yeah,
to celebrate the wins.
yeah.
We have to celebrate the wins because that's actually something that builds self-esteem, your relationship with yourself. You build self-trust, it builds confidence. So let's maybe add that in there to acknowledge the
I
win.
never do that. So would you make that? I mean, I don't even know what that looks like. I mean, would you make that? I mean, we
Okay.
could just make it even like I could make it an hour on my calendar where
An
I
hour might be too
recognize,
long.
yeah, where I recognize
Can
what
we
did I
can
get
we get
done?
5 minutes?
Yeah, what did I get done this week? You know who has a great daily calendar? Have you ever interviewed Moira Kusaba?
No.
She's
Should
a
we interview
Beachbody
her?
coach. Sure, yeah, she's
What's
a
her name?
Beachbody coach, Moira Kusaba, Moirakucaba. I've interviewed her on my show. She was the top performing Beachbody coach. and
Oh,
owned a Pilates studio
okay.
and has done all these different things. She's a speaker as well. And she has a planner that I bought that's called Proof of Life.
Ah,
And she organizes your week. And I don't know, I don't do this as often as I should. On good days, I grab it and look. But she has built into that nightly what went well for me today, or proof that life is happening for
oh,
me. And so, like, one of my days was Arlena asked me to co-host Self-Help Junkie. And so
yay.
it's like built in the good things.
You know, I just
Oh,
realized is I've been using the 5 minute journal for probably 5 years.
oh, I love
Along,
that. Where you write down something every day.
yeah, it's three things that I'm grateful for, three things that would make the day great, an affirmation, which could be like an intention or your purpose of the day. And then at the end of the day, it's what went well. Maybe I should just be using, you use yours and I'll use mine. And I feel like that's maybe the topic for the next time.
Okay.
I feel like we learned a lot
Yeah.
about the action items from last week's, the fear of people's opinions and finding purpose and internal validation. So if people want to talk more about this and get some feedback, please come to the Zoom meetings, join Patreon and join us. Um, we will figure out the schedule for that, but it'll all be listed. So let's talk about the topic for today, which is the E plus R equals O mindset, which stands for event plus response equals outcome. So what would you like to share about that? Because you found it and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
So cool. I'm a formula girly. I love this kind of stuff. It makes it easy to remember,
Yeah.
easy to apply. And Jack Canfield is just a wealth of information. I mean,
Oh my
he's got
gosh.
formulas like this. And so this is Jack Canfield's thing. If you guys don't know, he wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. He wrote a book called The Success Principles. He has a lot of audio on self-confidence and self-esteem that he was doing before there were even audiobooks. It's like keynote speakers that are all, mostly on Spotify or Audible that I listen to all the time. And he talks about, he's just got like brilliant ways of sharing things. And this is one of them. So,
He was on The Secret.
yes, I think he wrote The Secret. I think he's the main, he and
No,
some
that was
other woman, right?
Rhonda Bryan
Oh,
wrote
okay.
it, and he was one of the many speakers that was on it, but he was
Okay.
front and center.
Right. Okay. So event plus response equals outcome is this idea that there are no bad events. We have the ability to control our response and control the outcome. And also, because I'm still a bit of a literature nerd, one of my favorite Shakespeare quotes ever is from Hamlet. And this is like an eternal, forever, concept, because there's a line from Hamlet that is, there is nothing either good or bad, only thinking makes it so.
That's a Shakespeare quote.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Isn't that
I
cool?
didn't, I have heard that so many
You've heard a
times. I
quote?
had
Yeah,
no
that's
idea
from
that's where it
Shakespeare.
was. Holy
Yeah.
shit.
I was in I could read Shakespeare like it was reading English. It was weird. I really like understood it,
Girl,
which
you're
is
so
weird.
smart. Do you even know it?
Well, I'm not, but
You
the data
are.
was. I am with literature and reading. I'm not with many other things. But
Okay, well,
so I
let's,
love that quote, and it just shows that it's like a timeless concept, right? Across
yeah,
humanity, we choose,
timeless.
we choose these responses. And so it's like, for example, in the two examples he gives, one of them I think is a little bit dated, but so say somebody says to you, Arlena, you have green hair and I hate it. You would not be affected by that because you don't have green hair. These
Right.
days, plenty of people have green hair. So I thought a better one that more people can relate to is I'm left-handed. If someone said to me, you're right-handed, that wouldn't affect me because I just
Right.
know I'm left-handed. And so that would not make me think, should I be writing with my right hand? What's wrong with me? Right? Because
Right.
I just know internally what like my actual truth is. And so it's this idea that can we get to a place where we know our truth? And so regardless of the event that happens, we can choose to either internalize it, not internalize it, or control our response to it, right? And I have a couple of different examples of that. So my addiction obviously was awful. And I used for many, many years and was homeless and was like in and out of jail. And what really happened beyond the physical consequences too, and I think this is common for most addicts, alcoholics in recovery, I was so ashamed and full of regret about what I had lost. Like we were just talking about Shakespeare, I went to GW, I wanted to go to law school. And then at 35, I'm living in a sober living on a couch with no bank account, no ID. My SAT scores weren't helping me anymore. And I was so embarrassed. And I lived with this awful regret, like I had just wasted my life. And I came to believe, this is my whole message, I came to believe that my addiction was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Mhm.
And I completely changed my response to that event. And rather than living in shame daily and self-doubt and this deep belief that I couldn't achieve anything, I completely changed my mind and chose to see my recovery as like this great asset and not a
Right.
liability. I kicked heroin. I was homeless and I lived and I took the bus and I got my license. And those are examples of strength, not of being a loser. I completely changed my mind around that, right? So that's an example of an event and an example, and I changed my mind on that later. And then I wanted to give an
Mm.
example of the opposite, where
Okay.
something good happened and I had a horrible response to it. Because this is crazy what I did. My first Black Friday that I was open at my studio, we did a huge Black Friday sale. It was like 25% off class packs, a 5-pack, a 10-pack, and a 20-pack. We sold like $2,500 worth of sales that day. And for my studio at that time, that was great. I mean, that would still be great if we did that at Cycle Bar one day. That's good numbers for a studio. And
Okay.
I had only been open since September, and me owning that business was not good for my mental health for a variety of reasons. I'm not someone that can relax about money. I'm a Taurus to my core, and I got to know exactly how much money I'm making. My friend Jana doesn't have to do that. She doesn't love not knowing, but she can live a little easier with it,
Yeah.
Like that entrepreneurial side. I have the creative side, but the faith and the money eludes me. And I think probably most
We'll
people
work
feel
on
that
that.
way. Yeah, but I think with my trauma from being homeless and stuff, it just
Oh,
affected
for
me
sure.
more. Like I
Yeah.
remember telling Skylar, we need to make sure we own the cars in case we have to live in them. And we don't want to get pulled over because that's how you lose a car. That's how you get on the street. You didn't pay your registration. You get pulled over, they tow it, boom, you're outside. I know how this ends. And he
Oh,
was like, we're
wow.
not just going to be homeless. Like you were doing heroin. But for me, that was so real. I was like, we need
Yeah.
to plan on maybe living in the studio. We might have to live in the back. It actually wouldn't be that bad. We can get a
So
blow up
you're
mat.
planning for worst case scenario.
I was, yeah.
Got it.
So all the time. And while I owned that studio. So the Black Friday, we sold $2,500. And my marketing person was happy about that, obviously. And I was like, oh my God, we made a huge mistake selling all those class packs at a discount because those people would have bought them full price later. I don't think this was a good thing. I don't even think we should have done the sale. Oh my
Oh,
God.
wow.
And I freaking panicked over making $2,500. And
Wow.
that is an example of a good event that I flipped my response to and made
Oh,
bad, right? And
interesting.
so
Yeah.
we can do it in either direction. And
That's
I
such a
feel
good
like,
point. Oh my
right?
God.
We
I
can
didn't
make it
even think
bad.
about that.
And I do that a lot. We can make it bad,
Yeah,
like
I did
even
that.
my husband is amazing. Like he's such a, like he's all the things. He's so supportive. Like my friend Jana, she's starting to see this guy and we're having all these issues with our bikes at the studio. And she called me and she was almost in tears and she was like, he wants to help. He watched a YouTube video and he's going to come look at the pedals. Isn't that great? And I was like, Jana, that's what they're supposed to do. That's what they're supposed to do. Like, remember my ex, Nick? He came and fixed the audio before the Halloween ride that time years ago because she and I have been friends for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah. And I was like, and Skylar's in there all the time. I don't even own this one. That's what they're supposed to do. And she was like, yeah, that's just not my experience. And it's like, I need to recognize though that that's a great thing
Yeah.
that my husband does. He would do anything for me. He would
Yeah.
leave work and come fix something if I needed it to happen. So like we can do it in both
In
directions.
both ways. So we're not giving ourselves credit and experiencing the joy, which is crazy because all the manifestation Prince teachers talk about you have to focus on the feelings that you want to feel in order
Right.
to attract more of it. So
And
that
allow
makes
them to
perfect
generate.
sense.
Yeah, and find that regenerative feeling. So, but here's the trick. How can we do it in real time? Because both of these examples are in retrospect, right? Or COVID was the best thing that
Okay.
ever happened to my studio, ever.
Yeah.
Really wish I'd known that at the time, you know? It was
Yeah.
amazing. It was great for us and my community, and it was a really wonderful time for us at the studio. We carved out this little slice of heaven in Encinitas.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, and a lot of things were very lucky for me. How do we know it in real time?
Okay, so I have a question. We have 3 minutes. Do you have a
Well,
hard stop?
I can go to 45. Oh wait, no, I said 9:30. It's only 9.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Phew.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, yeah. No, I have till
I was all
9:30.
stressing out over here because I was like, I have a great example that I want to run by you.
No, we have time. We have 9:30. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay. Because you did mention, I was taking notes as you were talking because I did sort of note that there's an initial response and there's a long-term response. And as I was doing I always take everything and turn it into a writing exercise. So the E plus R equals O. I found an article where this guy was talking about the event is something we cannot control,
Mhm.
and the response is something that we can control,
Right.
and the outcome is something that we can influence. I don't know if control is the right word. He said we can control our actions, but we can't necessarily control the outcome. We can influence it heavily.
Well, to me, the actual outcome, the external outcome, I think we can't control. But if we look at the outcome as how we simply feel, we can control.
Okay. So that kind of brings me to my second point. So I had an experience, so I was using this. I had an experience where the event, well, I hope she doesn't listen to this. I got feedback from this gal about my Instagram marketing that was highly negative, which I asked for
Yeah.
because it's really hard to get constructive feedback from people because everybody's your friend. They love you. They don't want to hurt your feelings, blah, blah, blah. So this girl's like, I will give you honest feedback. And I was like, hot damn, I am so grateful. I still am grateful, but that does not divorce me from my emotional experience of what happened. So if we take this formula and say the event was I got highly negative feedback, constructive feedback about my Instagram marketing. So that was the event, and which I couldn't control how it was presented to me. And the response, which is something I'm supposed to be able to control, um, I found that the feelings, my response in terms of feelings was not something I could control. Because
Mm,
while I was hearing it, I kept saying, but this is good. I asked for this. This will be helpful. She's pointing out that what I'm doing isn't working. So I need to know what to do instead. And I'm like, I asked for this. Like, I was having this battle between my head and my heart. And inside, I'm crumpling like a tin can.
right.
Like I was so okay. So my feelings were not something. So my response was I shut down.
Hmm.
And then because of my feelings were I sent them to you in an email that was way more because I was frustrated. I felt sad. I felt totally defeated. And those were my feelings. That was my like emotional response that I really had no control over.
Hmm.
And to pretend like spiritual bypassing, like pretending and trying to intellectualize, but this is good. And like, I needed to know this. And I already knew my shit wasn't working.
Hmm.
Like I couldn't, and what I know for sure is that we make decisions emotionally and justify logically. So I kind of got stuck in the response, which my response was I shut down. And then I noted that there was a belief, like I had these feelings. And I said, what's under the feelings was a belief, which is I can't figure this out. I've tried and failed so many times. So it was a story. I started telling myself this story. Like I've been doing this so long, like I know what to do, but I can't execute. There's a disconnect. I can't
Right.
figure it out. I can't figure it out. So I kind of felt like I could not control my initial response.
So
Um,
here's what I would say to that. We know that feelings aren't facts. So we can feel them, right? And that's something that I've heard in recovery. It doesn't necessarily mean it'll be easy,
yeah.
right? But the intellectualizing is like cognitive behavioral therapy. I think we can lean into what are the facts. And it doesn't mean we won't feel those feelings, but we can control our response, though we feel that way. It's like, I'm sure in the early days you wanted to drink, you felt like drinking, but didn't. And that wasn't
Yeah.
spiritual bypassing, right? That was using your intellect and your logic to know that though I feel this way, it does not mean I have to act on it. I can lean into what I know and then let yourself feel the feelings. Call me, which I think you did a few days later, talk to your husband, but it doesn't have to turn into an outcome of, I am a failure, I'm quitting.
Yeah,
It
because
can
that's what
be, that was
happened is
hard to hear, but the outcome is, wow, I really learned what I'm not doing correctly.
yeah,
And I got some great advice today, and it was hard to hear, but the outcome is, I'm really glad I learned what I need to be doing differently. And so I don't think that that's negating the emotions. I think
yeah,
we can feel the feelings and lean into the intellectual side anyways, right? Just like that, if I feel like if shooting heroin, I'm not going to though.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So when I was doing the writing process and the notes I sent you, I recognized something really interesting. So that wasn't like the end of the experience. Like I literally couldn't do anything for like I haven't posted at all.
Oh.
And I was talking to a friend and she validated my feelings. Like he
Mhm.
validated my feelings, my husband validated my feelings. And that's kind of what helped and I know this in coaching, like I do this for people all the time, right? It's like first we have to validate the feelings before we can get off of them. That's the difference between spiritual bypassing, which was what I was trying to do. I was
Okay, I
trying
think,
to, I was trying to intellectualize it when what I really needed to do first was validate my feelings. And it took a minute and it took a few people,
right.
right? I talked to you about it. I talked to my husband about it. I talked to my other friend. And there was something about I like needed to feel safe. And when I felt safe enough and it felt like this connection, I felt I felt the shift happen internally to then go, okay, now I can start going back to my notes that she gave me to start taking different actions. But I was telling you I did that Tony Robbins
Yeah.
free workshop thing. And so in doing preparation for this, um, I've known this to be true about the reframe. So in doing the writing exercise, I identified what my belief was, my limiting belief. I have a limiting belief that I can't figure this out. I keep trying, and so I was like, so the reframe happens in three steps. It's like, what's your old story? My old story is I can't figure this out. What is your new story? And this new story is like, oh, I can ask friends for help. I can ask for validation to help me process my feelings so that I'm not like all inflamed so that I can go back to my logical mind and get regulated again, emotionally regulated again. So I can go back to my intellectual mind and go and sort of run the experiment, which is like my new favorite thing. Don't judge the process, run the experiment. And and so that's kind of like along the lines of my new story. Like, what is my new story? And then think about how my new story will change my life. So in this case, it's like I had this old belief, I can't figure it out. I feel frustrated and sad. Like the new belief that I can rewrite, it's like, well, I can get help. I can figure it out. And with practice and as I run the experiment, I will learn and I'll be able to tweak my actions moving forward. So that's kind of like full circle. It's like how I feel like I'm going to be able to change my outcome.
And that all of that was your response that ultimately made it positive. So
Yeah.
that was your process.
Oh, my
You
process was like
had
I
a process in there of
like,
reframing the belief and
yeah,
speaking to different people. But I feel like we'll each have, the people listening and myself will each have different response methodologies.
different processes and
Yeah. But the
yeah.
point is, you did control that ultimately. That was
Okay.
your whole response. You came back to, you ultimately made that a positive thing. It doesn't make it was easy. It doesn't mean it was easy, but you
Yeah.
ultimately made the outcome of that event something where you found some growth and you're going to come back to it and take the information that you got and internalize it and maybe take some different action on your Instagram. So
Yeah.
that is an example of you did take a different response. You could have just
Okay.
quit Instagram. You
Thank
did.
you. So you're helping me acknowledge the wins in real time.
Well, it's true, and it didn't even take you that long. This just happened last week. So,
Yeah.
and
You know what's
maybe
so
you
funny
bring up a
though?
good point. It's probably not possible to completely do it in the moment, complete, right?
That's
It
what I was
might
just
not
gonna
actually be able
say.
to, but that's why we're going to have our action items
Yeah.
of writing about it and
Yeah.
noticing later that night, because of course we're going to feel the emotions in the moment. And I
Yeah.
don't think it's realistic to say that we simply shouldn't, but the process you just went through and what you were saying about the limiting belief too obviously plays a part because if I'd said you had green hair, it wouldn't matter because it's
Yeah.
not your belief. So
Yeah.
beliefs play into this. And I think that that will be interesting for each individual and for you and me as we're doing these to start to
Yeah.
ascertain why did it hurt you so much? It hurt you so much because you do
I
have,
thought I believed it to be true.
of course, you do have an insecurity around social media, right? We've talked about
Huge.
that's
Huge.
why it hurt you, right?
And
Um,
you know what my story is? It's like I hate social media. It's not good for me. Social media is bad. Like I was like, oh, this is I'm creating a story to justify, like to give myself an excuse not to do it.
Well, I think it plays into, and I could be totally wrong about this, but I think that there's a part of you that feels age insecurity around it too, right? I mean, maybe not, but you
Yeah.
mentioned to me, I've told you this before,
It's
a
so
lot,
embarrassing.
one of the
I'm
first times
55 and there's all these women in their 20s that have like 2 days sober that are like
that are crushing
killing
it.
it.
It's
Yeah.
annoying. It's annoying,
But
right?
my
And
brain
all
is looking for reasons why. Like they say that your brain is a big meaning making machine.
right.
But so here's how I know that that's actually a limiting belief. We were just talking about Jack Canfield. How old is this guy? He was making tapes.
Right.
Like the interview that you were listening, that you shared with me, the lady who was the guest talked about how she got his tapes. Like
Yes.
that's like 30-year-old technology, and you and I are talking about him
Right.
today.
Totally, totally. And there are so many examples of now that I got out of LA, the age thing really bothered me a lot also. And frankly, it still does, right? This is why my cheeks hurt from filler right now. It still bothers me.
Yeah.
But I have come to believe with the introduction of social media, we are more captains of our fate now because we
Yeah.
don't need permission from some asshole at Paramount Studios in an office
Oh, yeah.
to
Yeah.
get a platform anymore. Then
Yeah.
it really mattered. It matters way less now. Dave didn't get sober until he was 43.
Wow.
He's
Okay.
50 and he's got that massive show.
Yeah.
So now with the advent of social media, I feel it's it actually, that's one positive here is that we write our own ticket now, in
Hmm.
terms of getting out there. And there are things to fight with the algorithms and all that, of course,
Hmm.
but in a way, it's good. It can be really good.
We can learn it.
We can bypass the stupid systems where all of the biases are in place, where you do
Yeah.
have to be young. Those are Hollywood biases. And before, to get a platform, you had to go through those guys. And,
Yeah.
and that's a total crapshoot.
Yeah.
We do have the ability now with social media to get ourselves out there in different ways. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So, and I didn't even mean to suggest that as a potentially way to look at it differently for you, but I suppose it could be.
Listen, that's true. And the truth of the matter is that the women that are attracted to me are in my age group. So they're struggling with all the same things,
And
right?
there's a
And
lot of us.
listen,
And
as
there's a lot of
women,
us. There's a market for you.
well, listen, as women, we are all compared to each other. And women as early as 30. Can I just tell you this one quick story? I was back in the day when I was helping people, I was like in sales, and I was doing website development. So I got this client and I brought him to this team of people that did website like development on a higher scale. Anyway, and one guy was like a former Navy SEAL and he was like in San Diego. So I found this client and I matched the two together. That was my job. And so I went into this meeting and they were talking, and the client had a resort in Mexico somewhere. and it was like a fancy resort. And so he needed a new website. So I brought these guys in. One was a Navy SEAL. I forget what the other guy was. And I brought these two guys together. So I'm sitting in a room with these men, and they were talking about this guy's fancy resort website, and they were talking about the pictures. And there was a woman in a bikini next to a pool. And I don't even know why the joke came up, but they started joking around. Well, she's got to be under 30 because if she's over 30, basically they were rejecting her for some reason. And I'm in the room and I'm 42 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hello, I'm right here.
Yeah.
And you guys are talking about how women over 30 are no longer attractive. I was
Yeah.
like, what is going on? So we get these messages all the
Yeah.
time.
We're
And I think as
inundated with those
women,
all the
I
time.
don't care how old you are, you will always be worried about the younger woman.
Agree.
Yeah.
That
So
just
let's
popped
work
into
this
my
shit
head.
out
Something
now.
I heard once. Ugh, I forgot about this probably till right now. I was seeing my older restaurant manager when I was like 22, and I will never forget him saying, so my big thing has always been body weight and size for a long, long,
Mm.
long, 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 long time. And something I am so happy about for these Gen Z kids on TikTok, they don't care about cellulite anymore. They really don't. They
Are
don't
you
care.
sure?
I'm positive. Okay, I'm positive. I was go on TikTok. If you
Well, that's
watch
true.
like these
Actually,
bikini shows,
yeah.
I mean, there was this girl who had a lot of cellulite, in my opinion. And I went to the comments
Objectively, she had a lot.
objectively. Yes. I mean, a fair
A
amount.
plus, like a plus size model is
Yeah.
objectively,
She
yeah,
wasn't, she was like very thin, kind of up top, and then she had a big old booty.
right,
And she definitely had some cellulite, like an amount that shocked me for her being in a bathing suit runway show. And there was like four of them. There was a little skinny one, a little bit bigger
because
one.
you wouldn't feel comfortable doing that.
Well, I wouldn't have thought she would have been hired based on my
Right.
understanding of the world so far. And I went to the comments, Arlena, there were like 400 comments, and every single one of them, mostly men, were like, give me the blonde all day. Give me the blonde. Damn, the blonde, number three, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what? What?
Yeah.
What? And I was so
Barbie. They still
overwhelmed.
want Barbie.
Well, no, 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 no. They liked her.
Oh, she was the big one?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. They were all saying
Oh,
number three, number three, number three, her. Every single one of them. A guy even said,
nice.
I love me some hail damage.
What is that?
Cellulite pockets,
Hell damage?
hail, like
Okay.
hail on her legs.
He
And
loves it.
yes, and I was overwhelmed with this, like, no way this is happening. And I remember I said to Skylar, because my
We
cellulite
have been
story,
so brainwashed.
I know. My cellulite story is bad. It's like my biggest thing. I've got this weird thing about it. And I said to Skylar, I'm like, can you believe this? And he was like, yes, I can.
He's
Like,
like, I'm a dude.
it's fine. Yeah. Uh-huh. And these Gen Z girls will wear little booty shorts with some cellulite and they do not care. And I love that for them. Say what you will about Gen Z. They are busting a lot
Yeah,
of,
thank
you
God.
know, gender biases, but like I just thought it was so beautiful. And I thought,
Yeah.
man, if I had known this, if this had been, but it's not just us. They weren't, she wouldn't have been on that show in 1998 or 2004. So
Yeah.
things have changed. And that's why I was saying my manager, I'll never forget him saying something. He was like, he said something about a size two being the perfect size for him, which is such a weird thing to say. And now when I look back, that guy was 30. And now when I look back, I see that as a reflection of him. But at the
Yeah.
time I didn't. I saw it as a reflection on me, you know? So yeah, we get those
Oh,
messages all
interesting.
the time.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget reading those comments.
I
But
have a
even that is an
girlfriend.
example of now that I'm older, my response to that event, him saying something like that, just
Yeah.
shows me that that
Yeah.
says so much more about the person, him,
Yeah.
than me, right?
I
And
love
that,
these. I love these. Yes, I totally agree. And I love these myth busting realities. Like I had a girlfriend who was she was at her highest weight. She said, when I was at my highest weight, I got hit on all the time.
Yeah.
And then when she lost the weight, like nobody hit on her anymore. She's like, I am the thinnest I've ever been.
Oh, that's so funny.
She goes, I can't get a date to save my life.
That's so
She goes,
funny.
when I was at my heaviest, I got more attention than and she was married. I don't know. I was like, that is really interesting. It just goes to show that,
Right.
we've been brainwashed and we
It's
don't
supposed to
actually.
show. Yeah. And I
Yeah,
see,
reality is subjective.
yeah, and I see pictures of me in my like early 30s and late 20s, and I'm like, oh, I was cute. I don't know what I was, you know what I mean? But I just was
Yeah.
so obsessed with cellulite and and again though, a lot of things have evolved, which I'm happy for. In the early
Yeah.
2000s, there were all those covers about Jessica Simpson being huge, and you see that cover now and you're like, what? Or Britney Spears when she performed at the VMAs, and
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody's like, ah, she put on a few pounds, and you see her
That's
now
so
and
sad.
I'm so brainwashed. I still think when I see that video, I'm like, she does look a little chubby. I can see her stomach moving. Go to the comments, and every Gen Z girl out there fighting for her life saying, she looks amazing. This is crazy. She looks amazing. This is crazy. And then other people
Yeah.
saying the same thing. It has changed.
Oh, thank
So,
God.
yeah, thank God.
We're
But
still
so,
working off of some conditioning.
right. So, what we were talking about for the action items,
Okay.
I would suggest for the seekers to write down, as well as you and me, like the examples that I gave, one event in your life from your past that you can recall that was objectively good, like I made that $2,500 and you made it bad with your response. Like you can look back and recognize a time that you did that, as well as a time in reverse, an event that was objectively bad and your response to it made it better. My mother did that with her divorce from my dad. They'd been married for a million years. She lost everything, all the things.
Mhm.
He still has a much better life. They've got houses and cars and, like it was a huge loss for her.
Yeah.
Financially, emotionally, he was her best friend, everything. She now is like, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I wasn't myself. I was constricted, all, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It forced her to look at herself, and she was like, it brought me to my knees. I thought he would never leave. And it made
Yeah.
me be better because I wasn't
Yeah.
my best self. You know,
Yeah.
like
She wasn't
she's
like her
such a great
authentic
example of
self.
that,
Yeah.
Yeah. So a time when you can say, it was objectively bad and I chose to make it good with my response, objectively good and I made it bad, unfortunately, with my response, like my Black Friday sales. And then daily write about moments in the day or a moment in the day where we could change the outcome with our response, which happens every single day, right? Like somebody might say something that bothers us, or something happens at work, or
Yeah.
a podcast guest says no, or
Yeah.
an interview didn't go exactly the way that you, right? Every single day, there are outcomes that we
Yeah.
can make bad or good. And I think just, looking at these daily and writing
Okay.
about.
Okay. So it's again, we are such writers.
Well, good. I need to, it's
I am
one of the
too.
best things you can do for yourself is journaling, and I just don't do it anymore.
Yeah. But you
It's
do
also
now.
so fun to find old journals and look back. Like I have a journal that the top of it just says, I wrote it in Sober Living in all caps. It says, holy balls, I have 16 days today, not in jail.
Oh my God.
And I
Oh, it's
want to
all about the
frame it.
contrast.
It's from this time of recovery. It's late
Yeah.
January 2015. I'm in a sober living and I couldn't believe I had 16 days not locked up. And I love being able to go back and read that.
Yeah.
I'm blown
I would
away.
also like to propose, so what I really got out of this was an awareness about my limiting beliefs.
Okay, sure.
And so I would like to propose a writing exercise, a reframe. Like
Okay.
once you've maybe I should back up because I remember I teach a class, self-esteem class, and it's about how to identify one of the lessons is how to identify a limiting belief.
Right.
And I think that using a current event and going through this process of the formula, the E plus R equals O formula, is going to be a great entry point to establishing what your limiting belief is.
It's going to
But
show us. It's going to be clear day to day what's bothering me.
yeah, and I think a day to
I
day.
think I think a pattern of limiting beliefs is going to emerge from this daily writing.
Okay. Yeah, here's another way to get to it is how to identify a limiting belief. Make a list of what it is that you want, and then list as many reasons as you can think of why you don't have it. And the reasons you list for why you don't have it are clues to your limiting beliefs.
Okay.
Those are your limiting beliefs.
Right. Okay.
Right. And so the process is to reframe limiting beliefs. And the reframe is, I like the story thing because we all tell ourselves stories. So what is your story about why you don't have what you want? And then what is the news story? How can you reframe that into like, alcoholism? I thought it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I was a loser, blah, blah. I have no self-will. I identified in a negative way. And then like you, I realized it's like the best worst thing that ever happened to me. It like totally set me on this path of self-discovery and service, and it connected me to my spiritual practice.
Husband.
Husband, yeah,
Me
29
too.
years later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So do you want to
so
add that as another action item?
well, I feel like the reframe is going to be important.
Okay.
And if you don't feel like you have something on a day-to-day basis, like if nothing happened today that made like if there was no event that
I think that's
triggers like a
perfect.
negative response, you can still do the exercise by identifying a limiting belief through this process. So it's really maybe the action item is identify the limiting belief and then create a reframe around that.
Okay.
And so we could do it through the E plus R equals O formula,
Okay.
which is really the top priority or top level idea,
Right.
right? Because what we're trying to do is
Right.
affect outcomes, to control what we can control.
I also think identifying the limiting belief will get us closer to having a response in real time. Right. Because if we can
Yeah.
recognize, I know I'm getting upset because social media is a thing for me. I got it. Right. Then I think that that would be helpful. So I
So
like that idea.
embarrassing.
And I think we'll leave it up to the seekers, right? So you write daily, what happened to me? Was there an event that I either did or could have or wish I had had this different response? I can reframe the event in a different way. And then either as a separate at the beginning of all of this, or maybe I may do it at the end of all of this when I look back over my patterns, what seemed to really trigger me in there is the limiting beliefs, and then or what do I not have and why not, and those are my limiting beliefs. Or like you said, if there's a day when there's nothing we can really point to, let's do that, do that exercise. What do I not have? This is a good day to do it, and then write down the limiting beliefs, or do it maybe day one, because then we can start to look for them day to day. What do you
Yeah,
think?
for sure. Yeah, because the truth of the matter is we all have patterns.
Right.
Right, we're all repeating the same cycles of patterns. We're all running around the same track. And so this will help us
Right.
break the patterns. And I think I was having a conversation with my husband about this because I was sharing about what we were going to do. And he's like, you keep coming to like this is like part of your pattern. And I was like, that's true. And we kind of identified that it's really the actions. It's all about taking, like, he's like, you work so hard. He goes, but maybe you're working hard on the wrong things. And it was like, he confirmed an idea that I keep coming back to, which is taking right action.
Yeah.
It's not enough just to take actions. Like I could continue to do Instagram the way I've always done it.
Right.
That is not going to affect the outcome.
Right.
Right. Doing nothing also, which is what I did. Like I
Right.
went balls out for like 6 weeks and didn't get the results I wanted. And then this lady told me why. And then I just felt like a complete failure, wasted all my time. It's like I cannot figure this out and shut down. But shutting down also puts up a goose egg,
Right.
zero.
Right.
Right. So now he's like, it's about taking right action. And so I feel like going over this information like regularly will help me to, as I say, run the experiment and continue to sort of tweak the process until I get it right. Like
Right.
eventually over time, even if it's 1% a day, like the whole James Clear Atomic Habits thing, if you're
Right.
just 1% better every day over time, you will probably
Right.
start having the outcomes that you're looking for.
Well, and all three of those things are different responses.
What do you mean?
Change nothing. You had different responses that you could have done. The event was the negative feedback.
Yeah,
Continue doing Instagram the way you've always done it. That's a response to that event.
true. Yeah.
Two, do nothing, quit Instagram completely.
Yeah.
Three, take her advice and make some changes. All three of those were responses. You've chose this third one.
Did I?
Well, in theory,
In theory.
making it a better outcome.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I feel like those all three were responses to make
you're
the
right.
event good or bad, and you've chosen the third one. We're
Yeah,
on the right.
this is why we need each other. And this is why I think community is going to be so important during this
Right,
process because you can see things I can't see. Like I'm blind to my own process, basically.
right,
And
right,
you're my witness. You're like, no, like I watched you do this and you did that. And I see like you're witnessing
right,
and pointing things out that I feel blind to.
right.
Yeah,
And
because
and I think that all three of those things were the response, right?
yeah,
We did go through it.
yeah.
So let's let's say the first task is the limiting beliefs. That'll be day
Okay.
one. And then the rest of the days
Okay.
are the E plus R equals O.
Love it.
So day one is, when did I make an event good with my response? When
Yeah.
did I make an event bad with my response? And the limiting beliefs exercise. Let's just keep it simple. One thing I don't have: money or whatever.
Yeah.
Why not? Girlfriends. Why not? And then
Yeah.
those are the limiting beliefs. And then we do the E plus R equals O awareness daily.
Got it.
And I think that's a great way to start.
Love it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
enough. We don't
Yeah.
necessarily
Oh no,
have
that's a lot.
three,
Yeah,
but
I
it's
think
like
that's great.
this three action items is turning into a here are some three options, but do something every day.
Right. And let it unfold like it did for me. The purpose one unfolded for me in a different way. I was having a hard time grasping it,
Okay.
and then I realized a way to do it that did work for me. And that I'm really going to continue to incorporate. I mean, these three purposes of my marriage, my work, and
Mm.
self-care, I'm
Yeah.
going to schedule into my calendar daily. I mean, Sundays is going to be my
Nice.
marriage day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then ideally I can even have different days where it's,
Different
some is chasing
priorities.
heroin, some is cycle bar. Yeah, because I really
Yeah.
need to do that too now that I'm managing this studio, which is a much bigger job than I had been aware.
And now we have a self-help
GM of
junkie
this studio.
podcast.
There's a lot of stuff to do. So, but yeah, I think that's great.
Okay, cool. Well, listen, links to all this stuff will be in the show notes. I'll recap it. So after you listen to all this and you're like, what now? What again? I'll put it all in the show notes. There, we're going to encourage you to join the Patreon and come to the biweekly Zoom meetings. And as a community, like believe in what's the self-help junkie, it's self-help junkie podcast at gmail.com. You can send in your ideas, questions, comments. So the community, the seekers are going to be shaping this whole process. We're at the beginning. You can say like in 5 years from now, you can be like, I was a founder. I was with you guys at the beginning.
Love that.
Right.
Yeah.
So email us and help us to shape how this makes sense for you too. Just like Janine and I are, getting ideas from each other on these topics. We'll count on you to contribute so that you get what you need out of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. I think we did really good on time this time.
We're exactly 9:30, which is great.
High five. Woohoo. All right, my dear. It was so good to
Okay.
be with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Talk soon.